Hey everyone, welcome to Science Buffs, the ultimate podcast for STEM enthusiasts. I'm Abby,
And I'm Sam.
and we're going to get into a good topic today. So, Sam, how are you doing? Before we get into the topic, if you're new here, we could do a little bit of a weekly update, just check in. So, Sam, did you do anything fun this week?
Yes, I did. I never do anything fun. So I went to the disco in downtown this weekend and it was super fun.
It
And
looked
I sent you lots of
so fun.
pictures.
Yes, I got
Yes,
not a play by play, but I got some pictures throughout the night and it looked like it was a good time.
it was really fun. And I realized like how much of a difference being 21 versus being like closer to 30 makes because first of all, I pre-gamed with a 3-hour nap. And I drank a latte before I went there.
Yeah, so from my point of view, just for the listeners, I was like in bed, like reading, and Sam's like, I'm pre-gaming with a latte right now.
Yeah, and honestly, it worked. Like I was able to stay out till like 2 in the morning, so
You
it
know,
was
that was
fun.
like something in college that we should have done more is drink coffee beforehand,
Yeah, and then we
because that
wouldn't
seems like a
have
good
felt so
strategy.
bad. Yeah, it was good. Lots of
How long did
ABBA
you
music.
stay?
We got there at 10 and we left at like 1:30, so three and a
Oh
half
my
hours, I
gosh.
think, which is crazy because like
That's a late start.
I know. Usually I'm in
Wow,
bed at 8:30.
I did not realize you started at 10.
But yeah, it was
Dang.
a little crazy, but it was super fun. I'll post a video of the disco on the pod
That's
so
awesome.
everyone can see the ABBA music.
Yeah, I heard a little Michael Jackson in the background on one of those live photos,
Yes.
and I was grooving, It's
Yeah.
fun.
We had a good time, but like we felt like they played all their hits up front, like all the hits that everyone
Oh,
knows. And they
yeah.
rapped on like Bohemian Rhapsody, which I guess like unpopular opinion, I don't like that song. So I was kind of just standing there and then it was like time to go home. So
So,
I
was
was
it like
like,
a concert where there was an official start and end, or was it like more of a just because
yes, they
it was
shut
a
them off at
concert.
like 2, I think.
Oh, okay.
1:30.
I
Yeah.
kind of thought it was more like a just a club sort of vibe where you could just come and go whenever.
It
But I
is. So
guess,
like they had a DJ and like it's just a big dance floor. There's no like you don't sit anywhere like
oh,
admission or
okay.
anything. But yeah, they shut them down at a certain time.
I
But it was
gotcha.
fun. It was fun because it was like safe because it was like 90% women. And
That's
so
awesome.
we're all just like dancing to ABBA music. It was really fun.
That looked really fun. Well,
Yeah,
good. What else did you do this week? Anything
that's
else?
it. I was tired for like 4 days after that and I got sick.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
did you do?
That's unfortunate. I did nothing. We started watching Christmas movies.
Oh
That's
my
about
gosh.
it.
Wait, which one do you? Well, I know your favorite Christmas movie is A Christmas Story. You love A
Yes,
Christmas
that
Story.
is like our tradition of we definitely have to watch that.
So you
You know
haven't
it used to be
dove
on
into
like
those yet.
no, we try to save the good quality ones to the end, like
Yeah.
towards, you know, but we just today watched Christmas or maybe it's called Holiday in the Wild, Christmas in the Wild. Have you seen that
Wait,
one?
is this the one where she goes to Africa?
Yes, it
I
is
cried.
so good.
It's
It's
very good.
I bet you would cry like with the elephants.
Yeah. When they release, I think she releases an elephant, right? And
Yeah, and
I
like
remember
this
just
baby
crying.
elephant like almost dies in the beginning and then she helps, save it and
Yeah.
stuff. And it's
I
with
really
Rob
liked
Lowe,
that one.
so of course it's good.
Who's the main woman again? Who's the leading
Oh,
lady?
I forget her name. Which is funny because I asked Jason like, "Oh, what's this lady's name?" And then I got distracted and I never looked it up, and now I don't know.
Yeah, I
I'll have to
really
look it
like
up.
that one. That one's
So
probably one
good.
of my favorites. I always watch the Christmas Prince series.
Oh yeah, we just watched. Oh, you know what we just watched too, which we'll watch like 5 times probably before Christmas, is the Princess Switch.
So I disagree with you on that one. I don't like that one.
It's not good. But it's great. It's with
Okay,
Vanessa
I get it.
Hudgens,
I know.
and
But her
it's
accent kills
oh,
me.
That's why. And every time we watch it, we like point out the 20 different plot holes. We're like, oh, there's kind of a raunchy line in there that is like shocking to me every time.
Dang
We
it.
talk about
Okay,
it
I'm gonna have
every
to go
time.
rewatch.
It is crazy. But
I'm gonna
yeah,
have to
I mean,
rewatch.
it's one of the trash like ones that we watch. So
I guess I have
anyway.
no room to talk because I actually really like the one that Lindsay Lohan did last year.
Oh, I
I
do
forget what it
too.
was called. I really
Yes,
like that one.
I did too. I was like, Lindsay Lohan's on a comeback. Wow.
I know.
So yeah, it's fine. I like the kind of, you know, throwaway classic Christmas ones
Me
until we get to
too.
the meat and potatoes like end of December. So it's
That's
all
true. You have
good.
to, it's like a crescendo to the
Right.
best.
You can't waste all the good ones. You got to watch The Princess Switch a few times.
Okay, I'll watch it again this year.
Okay, deal. But yeah, that's pretty much all I did. So exciting
And
stuff
that
over
sounds,
here.
that's usually what my weekends look like. So
Yeah. Well, exciting stuff. Do you want to just like get right into it? Oh, wait, I do have one more update that we can talk about. We both got Amelia Rose Earhart's new book.
yes, I
So
have
little
it right here.
teaser. Oh yeah, show the people because this is STEM related. So do you want to explain about her? I feel like you're a big fan.
Yes. So Amelia Earhart, she not so Amelia Earhart. It's confusing. Amelia Rose Earhart. She used to be, oh, here's a good picture of her. She used to be a Nine News traffic reporter in Denver, Colorado. And I grew up watching her on TV. Well, not grew up because we're not that far apart in age, but I would watch her on TV with my parents, and they thought that she was related to Amelia Earhart, and she ended up getting like her pilot's license and everything, and she flew around the world in a Pilatus. And so
Yeah, she like
she,
redid the route that Amelia Earhart did, right?
yeah, she did. And she wrote this book about her journey, and she's a motivational speaker now. And she does really incredible art. If you follow her on Instagram, she has really cool art that's like inspired by what she sees from the sky. And fun fact, we actually, Abby and I both met her once when we were in college. So she was on a panel at like a women in STEM event we went to at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, and she is awesome. So
And she
shout
shouted
out
us
to her.
out.
Yeah, she shouted
I
us
felt
out.
like
She's
a
awesome.
celebrity said my name. She's
Yeah,
like,
we're
we literally met her for like maybe 3 minutes, took a picture, and she like remembered our names, you know, for the 30 minutes, whatever. And I'm sure she was like,
yeah.
I gotta remember. So she went on the panel and she's like, I met these girls, Sam and Abby, and they're doing aerospace. And I was like,
Oh my God. I know. And it was funny because we probably thought we were just like really cool.
I
And then,
did.
but probably like the day before, we were like crying over a calculus exam or something.
I was like, I can do aerospace because of this moment. She knows me. I cannot let her down. Anyway, so we're gonna be doing a bonus episode where we're gonna read the book and then do like a little book club bonus episode in a couple weeks. So be on the lookout for that. Actually, it might be in quite a while. But again, bonus episodes are every other Monday and regular episodes are every Wednesday. So all right. Do you want to get into the topic?
Let's go.
Okay, I'm hoping that I did good enough clues that you won't get it right away this time because it might be a little bit obvious. Okay, so first clue is that it was featured in a Netflix docu-series, and it has been for the last like 5 years. It has 5 seasons.
Is it how like food is made? I don't know.
No, okay, clue number two. Yeah, you didn't get it immediately. That's a plus. Okay. There's a lot of different engineering that goes into it, like a lot of different aspects of engineering, but a large part of it involves wind tunnels.
Um, how cars are manufactured?
You're getting very, very close.
Oh, is this F1 racing?
Yes!
Okay, because you love that. Okay.
Yes, and I wore my
Yay.
McLaren shirt for the occasion,
I
just,
didn't even pick up on that.
as a
Oh my
subliminal
gosh.
hint, although I wear this like every day. I'm just really obsessed with this shirt, so it wouldn't have been that big of a clue. The third one was going to be that it's more popular outside of the US than in the US. It's like internationally very popular.
I feel like that might be changing though, because well, it
Yes,
could be because I talk to you every day, but I feel like I hear a lot more about it than I used to.
it's definitely getting a lot more popular, and a lot of that is because of the Netflix series. I mean, that's how I got into it. That's how like everyone I know who lives in the US who is into F1 is in it because of the Drive to Survive Netflix series. So,
I need to
yes.
watch it.
And then there's 3 races in America, and so now a lot of people are getting involved, and they're like companies are now sending influencers to these races, and it's becoming like a way bigger deal than it was. So it's on the up and up. But we're going to specifically talk about the engineering, like mostly the engineering related to the car design. And
I'm
then I'll
so
throw in
excited.
some fun facts about like just how Formula One works, but the majority is going to be on the engineering. So,
This is
okay,
awesome. I'm so
so I
excited.
guess what do you know about Formula One or motorsports in general?
I don't know a lot, but on our Science Stuff page, we followed a lot of women in Formula One pages. I think there's one, right, that we follow.
Yeah, and I just actually followed someone else that I'm going to highlight in this episode
Yes.
because when I was doing my research, I was like, oh, we need to follow her. But yeah, we follow a female in motorsport, like general page, um, which is really cool. So it highlights a lot of the like engineers behind the scenes, and then they talked to like a strategist the other day. So I would love to get a Formula One engineer on the podcast and interview them.
Yeah, that would
I
be
think that'd be
amazing.
super cool. So okay, cool. And we did some like wind tunnel stuff in school. We did a bunch of wind tunnel stuff for aerospace. So you'll know a lot of the kind of like fluid dynamics stuff that we'll
Will
talk
I?
about for
No, just
this.
kidding.
At least the general concept. I know I was reading some stuff and I was like, wow, this is a throwback to school. But okay, so yeah, so like I mentioned, I got into F1 because of Drive to Survive, so I'm very new. Like we got into it last year, basically, and we just binge watched like all 5 seasons. So my initial knowledge is very surface level, but now I am following all of the races and teams and drivers and stuff. So if any of you guys are fans, like DM us on Instagram and I will I can talk F1 with you. Um,
That is so cool.
I am like so not the person to get into car racing, but I absolutely love Formula One. If you like any reality show, watch Drive to Survive. It's like
Is it like a
drama.
reality show or is it like documentary?
It's documentary, but it like scratches the same itch as a reality show because they're talking about like, okay, we got to kick this driver out. Like they're not doing well. We're gonna demote him down. We got to pull someone else new up here. This guy got in just because of his dad's money.
Oh
Like
my goodness.
it's kind of like Kardashians, but like dudes in cars. So it's kind of fun.
Okay,
Um,
I definitely need to watch this. All right.
Yes. Okay, so just generally what F1 is before we get too deep into the engineering, just so we're all kind of on the same page. Formula One is called F1 and for short. It's an international auto racing sport. So the car itself is a single seat, open wheel, open cockpit. So if you look at a car, the you can see like the driver's head in like the open air. Now they added this bar around the side so that if they flip or anything, they're safer. Um, but it's an open cockpit car. So it's governed and sanctioned by something called the FIA, which is the Federation Internationale de l'Automobile. I think it's French.
Ooh, fancy.
And um, so that is like in general what it is. So a lot of these regulations that the cars have to meet and the specs that they have to meet are all governed by this overseeing body called the FIA. There's 10 teams currently. There could be up to like 13, I think the regulations say, but there's 2 drivers per team, 10 teams. So there's 20 cars on the track at any given time. Each team has a budget that they have to stick to build their car. So the cars are constantly going through different changes and tweaks and stuff, but the bulk of the building of the car comes in the off season. These engineers are working on the car and they have a certain amount of budget that they have to stick to. Because obviously you could build like this crazy better car with more money, like if you had
That's
unlimited
interesting.
money.
Does that
So
change like every year because things get more expensive?
Yeah, I don't know how often the actual number value changes, but they used to not have a budget cap. And so these teams that were like really, really good and well, so it was kind of be a problem because the teams that win earn more money for the next season. So they get a ton of prize money. So if you get first place, you get millions and millions of dollars more than the second place team. Then they would
Yeah.
like turn around and use that money to make a better car. So the gap between the last place car and the first place car was just getting crazy wide. So that's why they had to put the budget cap in place. So it was a little bit more fair.
I just keep thinking
Um,
of like I would be in that race because I'd lose every time with like the kid toy cars. That's like the little Jeeps.
yeah, it's
Be like, I'm
really
here.
crazy how much these cars affect things because it's it seems unfair a little bit because each team picks their driver and they put them in this car. Well, if an amazing driver hasn't been able to prove themselves yet in F1, like if they're moving up from F2 and they come into F1, they get put in maybe a lower ranked team. They could be the best driver on the track, but they're stuck in this car that's not as good.
So
So then they need to
what does the
wait.
one and the two mean? Sorry,
So
I'm
sorry. Oh yeah, I should explain that. It's just levels of different racing. So F1 is like the top tier. That's like the elite racing. Then there's these kind of tiers below that. So people who win F2, if there's an opening in F1, if someone retires or whatever, they can get pulled up from the F2 like league
so you and
essentially.
I are in like F25.
We're like F100. We're working our way up. So yeah, so then drivers are competing for themselves individually, and then as a team, they're also competing for like a team title, which is called the Constructors Cup. And that recognizes like the engineers and the strategists and like the whole constructors team. Um, so okay, let's get into the engineering. So there's a couple
I
different,
have a
yes,
question.
ask
Is this a
away.
myth or a fact? I feel like I've heard this. This is one thing I might know. Do they have to rebuild the engine every time they race?
No.
Okay. I feel like I heard that they after every time they race they had to like rebuild the engine or something. I don't know.
I did not read that either. I think that would be like the most expensive thing ever.
Okay, I made it up then.
So no, but they do. No, I think they would, if anything, have to rebuild like the parts of the chassis, but I don't think they. I think they try to not touch the engine because a lot
Okay.
of them don't even manufacture the engine. But okay, let's start with
Okay,
the.
sorry.
There's a few different engineering areas, as you would imagine, probably with the car. So there's like the chassis that you have to engineer, then there's the engine, and then there's tires, and they all involve different teams of engineers to build them. So for the chassis design, obviously you want it to be as aerodynamic as possible to go as quickly as possible. But the thing that really surprised me when I learned about this is that, well, you know, when we put like an airplane wing in a wind tunnel, you wanted to make it lift. You wanted to generate as much lift as you could. Well, for an F1 car, they're trying to do the opposite of that. They're trying to make as much downforce as you possibly can. So they want the car to push into the track, which I guess that makes sense, but I like would never have thought about that. I was just like, okay, reduce drag to go as fast as you can. But they're not just wanting to reduce drag, they're wanting to press the whole car into the track. So
That's interesting.
yeah, those are the 3 points they said was like the major engineering things was reducing drag, generating a downforce, and minimizing any lift.
So if you designed it wrong, it could just take off.
Yeah, it could be like a projectile.
Too much
Like,
lift.
oh, we put them in like upside down, it's lifting. Okay, so
Sorry.
all those things are done with different structures on the car. So, like the structure of an F1 car is very, very specific. It has front and rear wings, and then diffusers to get that downforce and minimize drag. They try to make no like sharp corners. They want the air to be very smooth flowing around the car because these cars can go upwards of 200 miles an hour. And so it's really important to, you know, get as smooth of air as possible and get the most aerodynamic car as you can. So the downforce is really important because of the corners. So unlike NASCAR, which is basically just like a loop where you turn left every time, F1 tracks are all different. They are way bigger. So you do like 70, I think it's 71 laps is one race, but within that one lap, you're turning left a bunch of times, you're turning right a bunch of times, you got straightaway parts. So you really need your car to be kind of dynamic. But if you try to go fast around a corner and your car is not generating downforce, you'll just fly off the track. So that's why it's really important to generate
That makes
downforce
sense.
to get your tires to like stick, especially on the turns.
And you probably want the downforce, but you don't want the weight, so it can be fast.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So it's very important. Like drivers have to stay at a certain weight. Your car has to be under a certain weight without the driver. Yeah, exactly what you said. You want it to be light, but you also want it to be as pressed down into the track like as much as you can. That sentence didn't make sense, but you get what I'm saying. Um, okay, so there's all these teams of engineers that are designing these cars, that are making tweaks to the cars. They can have updates to the cars from week to week, which is really impressive. So they can be redesigning the chassis. Like if they, so a race is called a Grand Prix. If they see in one Grand Prix on
I
one weekend,
recognize that from Mario Kart.
oh yeah, I know. We are seasoned vets in Mario Kart, so I'd expect nothing less.
The
We're
Grand
basically
Prix.
we're basically motorsport pros after that.
That's
But yeah,
crazy though. From week to week, that's like agile
yes.
scrum type.
And this is why I want to join a Formula One engineering team because the turnaround time has to be crazy because they can and I think some of these changes are obviously probably being developed over multiple weeks and stuff. But I'll be listening to these F1 podcasts and Dax Shepard actually has a really good one because he became a new fan because of Drive to Survive also. But they'll be saying like, oh, they try to predict who will get 10th because it's like we know who's going to get first every week. The same guy wins every single week. So they try to predict 10th. And they say
Interesting.
they'll have these conversations like, okay, well, this team is putting in their new changes, like their new mods to the car this week. So I think that they'll have a big jump in their placement. So it is interesting that it's not just the same car going through the whole season.
They probably have
So
to submit their mods to like that board you were talking about.
yeah,
The
everything has to be within
FIA.
regulations. There's a ton of regulations. So like if they want to make and I don't know if they're doing this mid-season, but if they want to make a change to like a certain part, like there was whole controversies where people can buy parts from other teams because they're like willing to trade, but then the next year that part you'll have to manufacture yourself. It's like the regulations change and you'll have to manufacture something else. And then yeah, everything's pretty heavily regulated. But they try to
And they're
leave enough
probably
wiggle
expensive, I'm
room.
sure.
Oh yeah, very expensive. But they try to leave enough wiggle room within the regulations so that each car can look a little bit different. Like, in NASCAR, they're all, I think, pretty much identical cars. So there is enough room for them to have a little bit of a unique thing going. Um, but yeah, so they have to be within the regulations, submit those. So there are multiple ways to test out these changes once they're implemented or when they're trying to figure out which ones to implement. Some of it is on track testing. So a lot of teams have test drivers that will be paid as like I mean, they're not the drivers that are going to be racing on the track. They like save their drivers for race day basically, but they'll have other drivers who are experienced in F1 or F2 come in and test on a track and get the feel for the car. So that's one
I
way.
volunteer as tribute.
It would be crazy. I
It'd be
like
so fun.
going that fast around corners. Oh my gosh. Like one of the team principals is called, he's like basically the guy who runs the team, was saying that when he was in, I think it was F2 or 3, he saw this guy just because you have to commit to the corners and go faster or else your car will fly off the track because you're not getting downforce. And he just realized one day, he's like, I will never commit like that guy committed. I need to like do something else. And he started running a team instead of driving because it was too scary for him to ever commit to a corner like that. So I don't think I would be able to do it.
That sounds pretty
Um,
scary.
but the other way to test it is wind tunnels, like I mentioned before. So each team has a specific amount of time in the wind tunnel. Now, people's placements from last year. So let's say the last place team, since they're at such a disadvantage, they will get more wind tunnel time for the next season in preparation of the next season, again, to kind of even things out. Um,
So do they
so
all share a wind tunnel then?
I don't think so. I think they have different wind tunnels. I think
Oh,
a lot
so
of them
they get
have their
like
own.
they're like you can't spend so much time in the wind tunnel that you like scientifically predict it. So or like it's a
Correct.
excellent performance or something.
Basically, like, yeah, you could, yeah, because with unlimited money and with unlimited wind tunnel access, you could like hone the perfect car. But they're like, we
Yeah.
need to even it out a little bit. So you get X amount of time to test in the wind tunnel. So go and develop your best design kind of outside the wind tunnel and then bring it into test. So they have a certain amount of time for that. Interesting thing is wind tunnel time can be taken away as a penalty for things. So Red Bull, I think it was last year, overshot their spending budget, their budget cap. They say it was an accident and like someone didn't report something, and there's all this controversy that they spent too much money. And as a penalty, their wind tunnel time got cut. So, and they were saying like,
Dang.
oh, this affects us so much, and yet they win every single race still. So,
Are they the
so I
best
don't
team?
think
Like,
they.
do they usually win
Yes,
Red
yeah.
Bull?
There's a guy Max Verstappen who is a Red Bull racer, and he's won the last like 13 races, I think. 12, 13, maybe more. It's like every week he wins, and then we're like, who's gonna get second? So, he's really good. But
That's crazy.
but yeah, so that was kind of interesting. So they do a lot of wind tunnel testing, make sure they're generating the downforce, and then they bring it to the track for a certain amount of testing as well. So that's like the chassis design elements. Any questions on that?
That's so cool. I already interrupted you a lot. So.
Okay, let's move to the engine then. And this is where it gets very sketchy. I don't know much about engines, so some of this I'm just going to be reading some of the stats in
Obviously, I
case.
don't either. If I thought it
Yeah,
had to be
so
rebuilt every time.
I, there's a lot of words on here that are just, we'll see. Okay, so all F1 cars have to have, again, specific stats in their engines, but the teams are able to kind of manufacture what they think will be the best engine for their car. So since 2014, all F1 engines have to be a four-stroke hybrid V6 engine with a displacement of 1.6 liters and a turbocharger to boost the power output.
Interesting.
It also says it with an 80 millimeter bore and 50 millimeter stroke, which I really don't know what those mean. I think I can piece together the rest of that. I don't really know those what the bore and the stroke mean, but
The V6
basically,
is interesting. Not that I know a lot about engines, but they make V8 engines, which are more powerful, right? So I
yes.
wonder why they don't use those unless it's just too big of an engine for that size of a car.
I
But
think part of their regulations are also just to make it more interesting and also for safety. I would imagine if they're going any
yeah,
faster than they currently are by any margin, it could be really unsafe.
so
So
you can't put like a scramjet engine on your
literally, yeah, like
on your
drop it
F1
in.
car. Yeah. You're pulling like 15 G's.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a turbocharger on the engine which forces more air into it, which is more power. The interesting part is like this hybrid engine component of it, which is there's electric motors and also a battery. So there's two electric motors in each engine. One adds power to the crankshaft, it says, and one adds manages the turbocharger. So there's that hybrid, whatever. I don't know what that means. But basically, then energy, when they need to brake and go around a turn, energy is stored back into their batteries. And then they use those batteries to then boost their engine on like straightaways. So
That's
there's a
so
whole
cool.
strategy going on with like how much to brake, when to save your batteries, when to charge them, when to use them, and all of that plays into like the race strategy. Which is why I
That
think
makes
it'd be
sense.
so interesting to talk to that strategist that we saw on Instagram because there is so much strategy that goes into F1
You would have to
racing.
understand. I feel like as a driver, you would have to understand the engineering a little bit.
Yes, and they do. And that's part of this whole thing is the drivers have a very, very, very close relationship with their like chief engineer. So there will be an engineer that's assigned specifically to one driver. So Max Verstappen is on the radio the entire race with his engineer, and they talk to each other the whole time. Max is saying like, I feel that something's off, and the engineer is, there's so many sensors on these cars, and so data is just coming back in a constant stream as the drivers are going through the race. And so it's a constant data analysis of like, is our power good? Where are our battery charges at? Can we try to overtake someone? Do we have enough charge during this? Where are our tires? So like there's constantly data coming
That's
back
cool.
and so many sensors built into these cars. Um, Another thing about the engines, so the cars have to weigh 746 kilograms without the driver and without the fuel. A lot of that is the engine weight.
Yeah, I would
Um,
assume.
Revs or like rotations per minute are limited to 15,000 RPMs, which like in our cars, just regular people on the road, we're basically capped at 6,000 RPMs. They can get up to 15,000. So these are like no joke
That's
engines.
crazy.
They're usually around 180 miles per hour up to like 200, a little bit over 200. And the average F1 car and engine produces 100 or 1,000 horsepower. So like my car, I looked up, it's like 300 to 400. So these so these cars are like 2 to 3 times, well, over like at least 3 times my car. So
That's
horsepower.
crazy. Do you know like how many G's they can pull? Like when
Five.
they five? That's
Yeah.
crazy.
So there's a real emphasis on like neck strength with these drivers. They're always doing this like neck band thing.
Oh, I've seen this
To,
video of a guy. I think he's like in an F1 sim and
yes.
he has to like crank it really hard, the steering wheel, and he's
Yes.
using like his entire body.
Yeah,
It's not just
and
like his arms.
yeah, they have to be really, well, it's weird. They have to be strong in very specific ways, I think. You're losing a ton of water and your neck like has to be really strong because of these G's that you're pulling. And you're doing this for like 2 hours. These races are 2 hours long. And so
That's
you're getting a
exhausting.
lot of strain on your muscles when you would think like, oh, it's driving a car. Like that doesn't seem that physically demanding, but because of these G's that they're pulling, it's pretty demanding. Kind of an interesting fact, and what creates a little bit of drama in the show, at least, is that only 4 teams out of the 10 manufacture their own engines. So they're obviously it's very, very expensive to manufacture your own engines, but it's better kind of engineering wise because you can kind of
You have
mess
more
with all the
control.
specs, and yeah, you have more control over your engine if you want to change something or whatever. So Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes, and Alpine are the only ones, or Alpine. Although I think it's a British thing to call them Alpine because every time there's an announcement, like Alpine's going down this thing. But if you look at it, it's Alpine. So I don't know. Anyway, those 4 teams manufacture their own engines.
But Red Bull doesn't and they win every race.
Red Bull does manufacture their own.
Oh, does. Got it.
Um,
Sorry.
so yeah, those are the 4 that do, and then all the other ones basically can buy other like engines from other manufacturers. What's very interesting is like some teams will buy the engine from another team that they're competing against. So I forget which team it was, but in the show, one team bought it from, let's say, I think it was like Haas. The Haas team bought it from Red Bull or something. I could be getting those teams wrong. But then they basically had an engine problem during the race and they started saying like they gave us this faulty engine, like they didn't give us a good engine, blah blah blah. And then the other team saying we gave you just a fine engine and meets all the specs. So it can cause some drama to not manufacture your own because you get so much more control when you
Yeah, but that makes
manufacture.
for good TV.
Great TV. I was riveted.
That's
So
yeah, because I
yeah.
mean, you can't really accuse them of that, right? Because I'm assuming the engine would have to go through checks anyways. But
Yeah, it's not like they're giving it. I mean, unless it would be like the biggest controversy in sports. Like I don't think they're giving a faulty engine to the team, but you know, they like to blame something. So that's an easy thing to blame if you didn't make your own engine.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we get to the like materials in general, which this kind of goes on the chassis. I probably did this in the wrong order, but the materials are very important when designing the car for all components of the car. So like the braking system and the engine, but also like the chassis of the car. So the most common material is carbon fiber. That makes up 80% because it's high strength and low weight, but it's also high stiffness. So if anything, like if they touch another car with it, it's not going to just like snap off the entire wing or anything. Hopefully that still does happen. But it's very strong but light.
Do you remember in
Um,
college did you have to watch the demo in the structures class where they torqued carbon fiber? And like
was it
they said the
plain
machine.
wings?
No, it was literally just a carbon fiber rod, and they
Oh,
said that the torsion machine would actually break before the carbon fiber would probably break.
oh, that's crazy, actually.
Which,
Yeah, it's
because
super
carbon fiber
strong.
is used a lot in aerospace.
The one I do remember that's similar to that is when they showed us like why we shouldn't be afraid of turbulence and like because there was a video of someone showing how like sitting in a plane showing the
Oh,
turbulence and
yes.
showing the wings were like really bending and they put it on a machine like a plane and they started bending the wings up and it was crazy how far they could bend up and they wouldn't
Yes.
break and they're like yeah you don't need to be worried about your plane wings like snapping off they're going to be
Yeah.
just fine so yeah, same sort of thing. Very strong, but lightweight. So this says that because this material basically makes the whole car safer. It says during the manufacturing process, increasing the temperature and the application of tension increases the modulus. This is going to ring back a lot from our structures class
Oh,
or materials class.
the
It increases the
modulus.
modulus, which is the ratio of stress along an axis to strain along that axis. So it increases the modulus of the carbon fibers, which makes them more durable. It says apart from carbon fibers, ceramic matrix composites are used in the brake system. They have a very high specific strength, which is another thing we learned about, and are strong compared to their weight. Also, materials like titanium are used to construct critical components like suspension in the gearbox. Um, so that's a common choice throughout all the cars. And then magnesium is used in the construction of the gearbox also, like in the casing of the gearbox and in the wheels, because it's also lightweight and high strength. So as you can tell, you want all materials that are as light as you can get, but as strong as you can get, basically. And then the last big one is nylon fibers, which are used to construct the I don't know how to say this word, but it's basically the cell that protects the driver. Like that whole cocoon is
Oh,
made of
yeah.
nylon fibers because it's very strong and rigid. So in case they have an accident, like they don't really care if that's as lightweight. They want to get it as like rigid as possible so that it protects the driver in a high speed accident. Um, Kevlar and aramid fibers are used to construct any protective gear to improve safety. And yeah, basically it just sums it up. You want lightweight materials.
That makes sense.
So, okay, then the last part is the tires that involves engineering. Now, this part I really underestimated when I was learning about it because I was like, I read that basically one manufacturer supplies all the tires for F1. So this is outside of the team dynamic of competition. They're not manufacturing their own tires. It's just one manufacturer giving them all the tires for race day.
Interesting.
So I thought like, well, if there's no competition, I don't know how much they're really changing, things. But there are crazy amounts of engineering that even just go into the tires. So all tires are 18-inch tires. They go through like to develop the ones that are currently, oh my gosh, I cannot speak. To develop the ones that are currently being used, there were 10,000 hours of indoor testing, then 5,000 hours in a sim, And then they developed 70 prototypes to eventually create 30 different specs of tires. So tons of testing goes into this. There's whole teams of engineers just working on the tires. And most of this is like chemical engineering because they're making compounds, different compounds that will react to like the tracks and get that grip and stuff that they want. So the way that the tires work, and there's whole strategies that I won't get into, but essentially this company creates 6 different compounds of tires, really 8, but 6 are the standard. So they're labeled from C0 to C5. That is going from like the soft, actually, I have to check if C0 is the softest or the hardest, but basically they go in varying levels of softness. They're compounds. And so you have those, which are just those are your dry tires, C0 to C5. Then you have intermediate tires, which are if it's starting to rain, but it's not fully raining. And then you have full wet tires. So those are the kinds that they make. Each are made with a different compound. So what happens?
Do they have to change these out in the middle of a race?
Yes. So I'll briefly go over the tire situation. Basically, for every Grand Prix, there's different conditions. So like the Austin Grand Prix is going to be a lot hotter than, I don't know where else they race. Like, I don't know. There's different climates. So if there's a super hot race, that's going to be different track conditions than a race that's done in the cold. Oh, I guess a good example, Las Vegas is going to be like they're racing at like 11 p.m. or something. It's going to be in the middle of the night. So that temperature is going to be different than middle of the day Miami heat. So, yeah. So what the manufacturer will do is before every Grand Prix, they will analyze the climate and the track conditions. So if a track is brand new, it could be a lot rougher than a track that's been there for a long time that's kind of smoothed down. So they'll take all that into account and they'll choose 3 different tires to have as like our soft set, medium set, hard set. And they determine that for the entire grid. It's called like all the drivers, all the cars. They're all getting the same tires, but the manufacturer is deciding which ones they're getting. So that's interesting. So it is changing week by week, but you're not competing between teams.
I wonder why they picked the tires to be the one standard component between all the cars.
It used to not be that way. There was like a competition between a couple of them, but I think it was just too, I don't exactly know, but I think part of it was probably cost. And then I think I read something about it, but I'll have to post in stories like why they decided to go with only one and not compete.
Yeah.
Because it is kind of like the standard thing there. And also, even though they're on the same tires, the strategy that you work with the different tires makes it completely varied amongst the group. So softer tires are better for longer distances because it's a softer compound. They will get you more speed, but they'll wear out quicker. So it's more speed for a shorter distance. So they will be used for like the qualifying laps before the actual Grand Prix a lot of times. Each team or each driver gets 13 sets of tires that they will use for the weekend, but they can't use any more than those 13.
Oh my goodness.
You would think that because soft tires get you more speed, teams would always want to be on soft tires. It is in the rules that you have to use at least like 2 of the 3 types of tires. And I think you actually have to use all of them. Like if you do 3 tire changes, you have to do a soft set, a medium set, and a hard set. You can't just use like all softs. So they're given 13 sets of dry tires, 4 sets of intermediates, and 3 sets of wet tires. So yeah, so there's a bunch of strategy in switching those out. But I was just fascinated by how much engineering went into these different compounds and choosing which tires were going to be the standard set for this Grand Prix versus the next Grand Prix based on like weather conditions. So that's what I wanted to highlight with tires.
That's so cool.
And then I think that's pretty much it. Basically, there's just like so much data. We should watch an F1 race together because they'll sometimes flash over to the engineers and like the principal of the team, and they'll be looking at these everyone has these big like portable stations kind of that they travel with, and there's just screens everywhere, and they're just looking at all the data real time and like trying to make
You and I
calls
would
to the
love that.
driver.
We
Oh,
love our data.
oh, it's the dream job. Like just looking, they're like, oh, the tires are wearing down too fast. Let's make a pit stop and change the tires. And so it's a ton of strategy, but it's all data driven.
We'll go
So,
to one, but I'm sure it's expensive.
oh, I looked, I looked at ticket prices. It was like $1,300 for a single ticket.
Oh my goodness, but worth it.
I don't
Maybe they'll
know. The
sponsor us one
track,
day.
oh, please. We can be the influencers that they send. We'll do
Dream job.
we'll be like, we just talked to like everyone else is trying to get to like the drivers. We're just trying to talk to the engineers.
Yeah, we're like,
Fangirling
tell
over
us
the
about your life.
engineers.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I guess the last thing that I want to highlight a little bit is the women in F1, because again, we follow some of uh the women, and there's no F1 drivers who are women. So it's 20 men is the grid for F1, but the whole organization just created this thing called the F1 Academy, which is all women. So there's no rules that ban women from the normal F1 racing. It's just, again, because they're like pulling so many G's and it's such a long race, there's a bunch of factors, but there's happened to be basically no women in the grid. But this F1 Academy is new, and the purpose of it is to like help women compete in the sport, and then hopefully give them a track to compete in F1, or one of the levels. There's like F4, F3, F2, F1. So getting women into those. And then the girl that I just followed on Instagram that I want to give a shout out to kind of is, well, she doesn't need our shout out. She has 1 million followers, but her name's Bianca Bustamante, and she is 18 years old. She just got picked for the McLaren driver development program. So
Oh my
that is
goodness.
not just women. That is like basically a pipeline that they kind of develop, where they'll choose a certain set of drivers, and then they'll like foster the talent of those set of drivers so that hopefully they can get to like the F1 level. So a few of the current drivers have been part of that development program, or the development programs on different teams. But Lewis Hamilton, who is like a big driver right now, he was in this same McLaren driver development program back
That
in
is so fun.
so she was just chosen for that, and it's a big deal. She's awesome. So
I'm gonna have to go check out her Insta after this.
she's like the
We'll post
best,
it.
and she, McLaren is like the nice orange stuff, so she's like really rocking the orange look, and yeah, it's great. So we'll see how she does in the program, but I'm hoping for the best. So
That's amazing.
yeah. So that's F1. That's the science behind F1.
Woo! That is so
Yay.
cool. Great topic.
Thanks. And we should definitely watch Drive to Survive together. Everyone who's interested, go watch Drive to Survive. It is a great show.
I can't wait. Yeah,
And let's
we'll
watch
do.
a Formula One race.
Yes, I can't wait because I literally obviously knew nothing about it. So
It's so fun. I feel like you'll get really into it if you watch the show. So
I'm excited.
then we can track it together.
Now that's what I'm gonna do with my cold recovery is
I love it.
watch
Oh,
Netflix.
yes, please.
Drive to Survive.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week. Make sure to follow the podcast on any platform that you are currently listening to it on. Go follow our YouTube, go follow our Instagram. We're on all the things, so just go follow us there, and drop any topics that you want to hear, like DM us or put it in the comments, because we are always open to new topics that you want to hear.
Yes.
And we will see you next week for another episode. Bye,
Yay.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.